The prairie stretched out in every direction, endless and merciless, the sky a dome of dying light bruised with purple and red. The cowboy stood alone beside the remains of his small camp, staring at the empty patch of earth where his horse should have been tethered. The rope lay slack against the ground, chewed through or broken. It didn't matter how. What mattered was that the animal was gone, and with it, his sense of direction, his freedom, his survival. He knelt, running calloused fingers across the dirt. Hoofprints led away into the tall grass, half smeared by wind. The trail looked almost deliberate, as if the horse had not bolted in panic but had been drawn, pulled by something unseen. He rubbed the grit between his palms, feeling the strange betrayal of it. That horse had carried him through storms and shootouts, across rivers swollen with snowmelt, through towns that would rather see him hanged than fed. It had been more than a beast of burden. It had been his one companion in a land that swallowed men whole. A hollow feeling spread in his chest. Out here, a man without a horse was half dead already. He could almost hear the land mocking him, wind slipping through grass like whispers, coyotes sending up their thin, cruel laughter as the sun fell lower. He remembered once, years back, watching another man lose his mount in a canyon. The man had tried to walk out on foot. They found his bones weeks later, clean and sun-bleached. The cowboy pulled his coat tight and set about making a small fire. Sparks leapt, then caught, smoke curling upward like a signal he did not wish to send. He cooked nothing, had little left to cook. The fire was just for warmth, and to push the night back a few feet. His revolver rested by his knee, the weight of it more comforting than the flame. He felt himself growing restless, his eyes always sliding back to that broken rope. Memory came unbidden, nights when the horse had stood guard without being asked. Ears pricking at the approach of strangers, steady as stone beneath his hand when bullets sang past. He had sworn once, drunk on whiskey and gratitude, that if the animal ever carried him through another winter, he'd see it brushed, shoed, and treated like royalty. And now it had vanished, leaving him here to reckon with a promise half kept. The fire burned low. The prairie darkened, stars pricking holes in the sky. He stretched out on his blanket, revolver close, eyes fixed on the horizon. Sleep would not come easy. Somewhere out there, beyond the rim of night, his horse was moving with strange intent, carrying a secret he could not yet name. He closed his eyes and made himself a vow. Come dawn, he would follow those tracks until his legs gave out or the earth swallowed him whole. The dawn came pale and brittle, light seeping over the prairie as though reluctant to touch it. The cowboy stirred from uneasy dreams, his body stiff from the cold ground, his mind still replaying the sound of hoofbeats that weren't there. He rubbed the sleep from his eyes, reached for his revolver out of habit, and then froze. From the east came the soft, rhythmic thud of hooves, steady, unhurried, impossible to mistake. His pulse quickened. He rose to his feet, dust clinging to his coat, and shaded his eyes against the rising sun. The silhouette took form through the haze of morning. A horse, his horse, moving toward him with calm determination. Relief washed over him in a hot, sudden rush, followed almost immediately by confusion. The animal was not alone. Seated astride its back was a woman. Her spine was straight, her dark hair braided and falling across her shoulders, her bare feet pressed against the horse's flanks with the ease of someone born to the saddle. She guided the animal without reins, her posture silent command. The cowboy's hand slid instinctively to his gun, not in threat but in defense against a puzzle he did not understand. The horse came to a halt a few paces from the campfire's ashes. Its eyes were calm, not wild from a night's run, as though it trusted the rider as much as it trusted him. The woman dismounted in a single smooth motion, her gaze never wavering. Her expression held neither fear nor apology, only the quiet confidence of one who owed no explanation. The cowboy felt words gather and falter in his throat. He had expected to find the horse grazing or spooked, not returning under the command of another. The silence stretched, filled only by the whisper of wind through the grass. At last, her voice came, low, measured, carrying the weight of someone who rarely wasted speech. She told him the horse had come to her in the night, unafraid, as though it sought her out. She had followed, not to claim it, but to return it. Gratitude battled with unease in his chest. The frontier had taught him to be wary, to trust only what he could hold in his hands. Yet there was something in her gaze, sharp, unyielding, but not hostile, that disarmed him. He asked her name. She did not give it. Instead, she looked at him as though names were luxuries for people who still belonged somewhere. The horse shifted its weight between them, a living bridge. The cowboy realized that whatever road had carried her into his camp, it was not one that ended here. The animal's return was no accident. Something larger was moving beneath the surface, some current neither of them controlled. He felt it in the tightness of his chest, in the hush of the prairie around them. For the first time in years, he understood that the loss of his horse had not been a misfortune. It had been an opening, and what stood before him was the reason. The days that followed unfolded with a wary rhythm, two strangers bound by a horse that seemed to choose them both. The cowboy walked while she rode, his boots grinding against gravel and dust, his eyes flicking often to her silhouette on the saddle. She did not ask him to take the reins back, and he did not offer. It was a quiet bargain, unspoken but acknowledged, like so much between them. She spoke little, but when she did, her words carried the weight of scars. One evening, as firelight licked the prairie grass, she told him her village had been burned, her kin scattered or slain. She did not name those who had done it, only said they were men who hunted for gold and blood with equal appetite. The cowboy listened in silence, the flames throwing sharp shadows across his face. He had no family left to mourn, but he recognized the hollow in her voice, the ache of someone whose past could never be mended. The horse shifted beside them, snorting softly, as if it too understood the grief. He offered her his flask, and for the first time her eyes softened, though she returned it untouched. She said she trusted the animal, not men. Her honesty cut sharper than any insult. As they moved deeper into the wilds, the air thickened with unease. Tracks appeared in the soil, fresh, heavy, the kind left by armed riders. The cowboy's instincts sharpened. He had known pursuit before, had felt the air grow tense before bullets flew, and this felt no different. He asked her if enemies followed. She answered without hesitation. They always followed. That night the fire was small, barely enough to push back the dark. He found himself studying her in the flicker of flame, the way she held herself like someone carved from both defiance and sorrow. He wondered if the horse had found her not by chance but by need, sensing a strength he himself was only beginning to see. The sound of distant hooves shattered the night's fragile peace. Both of them froze, eyes narrowing toward the horizon. She whispered that the riders were close now, men who would not stop until they had silenced her story forever. The cowboy felt the weight of choice pressing down on him, to walk away and save his own skin, or to stand beside her and take on an enemy not his own. He looked at the horse, calm even with danger pressing in, and realized that his life had already been altered by its disappearance and return. Leaving now would be like severing a rope tied tight around his soul. When the hoofbeats faded into silence again, he knew the reprieve would not last. He sat down beside her, revolver across his knees, and told her he would not run. She said nothing in reply, but her eyes met his across the fire, steady and fierce, and that was enough. The riders came at dawn, their shapes rising from the horizon like phantoms conjured by the pale light. Dust coiled behind them, a storm of hooves and steel, each man armed and hungry for violence. The cowboy and the woman stood ready on the ridge, the horse stamping the earth, its breath sharp in the chill air. He felt his pulse steady, as it always did before bloodshed, but this time it carried a weight beyond his own survival. The first shots cracked, sharp and flat, echoing across the open land. He dropped to one knee, revolver flashing, each bullet finding its mark with cold precision. She moved beside him, her bow singing, arrows slicing through the air with uncanny swiftness. The riders faltered, but more pressed forward, a tide of fury that refused to break. Dust stung his eyes, smoke curled from his gun, and still they came. The horse plunged forward suddenly, a wall of muscle and will, driving back one attacker's charge. A rifle cracked, and the animal shuddered, blood streaking its flank. The cowboy's heart lurched as if the shot had torn through his own chest. Rage flared in him, hot and merciless. He rose, firing with a fury that turned the world into thunder and red mist. The leader rode at last into view, a scar down his cheek and cruelty burning in his eyes. He carried himself with the arrogance of a man who had killed too many to count. The cowboy squared himself, knowing this was the true reckoning. Their guns barked in tandem, sparks and smoke filling the space between them. A bullet tore into his shoulder, staggering him, but he held his ground, teeth clenched against the pain. Then the woman struck. She moved like lightning, closing the distance as the leader lifted his rifle for the final shot. Her blade caught the rising sun and then his throat, swift and sure, silencing him in a spray of crimson. The remaining riders, stripped of command, faltered and fled, their hoofbeats retreating into the vast silence of the plains. For a long moment, the only sounds were the hiss of cooling barrels and the ragged pull of breath. The cowboy sank to his knees beside the horse, pressing his hand against the wound. The animal's eyes were wide, pained yet steady, as if promising endurance. She knelt opposite him, her hand brushing the horse's mane, her voice low but certain. The beast would live, she said. It carried more spirit than flesh, more will than bone. He looked at her, blood on her hands, fire in her eyes, and understood that his loss had led him here, to this bond, this battle, this fragile victory. The prairie around them was quiet again, not in mockery this time, but in recognition, when they mounted together, riding into the horizon with the horse limping but unbroken. The sky split with sunlight through the storm clouds. The land seemed to breathe with them, and for the first time in years, the cowboy felt he was no longer alone.